how Aron Ralston amputated his own arm. Picture this. You're deep in a canyon so remote that no one knows you're there. The walls around you are towering, silent, and ancient, carved over millions of years by wind and water. It's breathtaking, but also terrifying, because one wrong move, one misplaced step, and your whole world can come crashing down. Literally. Now imagine that moment. The rock you trust suddenly shifts, and before you can even scream, it pins your arm so hard it feels like your bones are being crushed. You're alone, miles from help. Your only options are to wait for death, or do something so desperate, so unimaginable, that it defies everything you thought about survival. This is not fiction. This is the true story of Aron Ralston. More than just a hiker. Aron was no stranger to the wild. At 27, he wasn't just any outdoorsman. He was a mechanical engineer by day, sure, but his heart belonged to the mountains, the canyons, the untamed wilderness of the American West. Utah and Colorado were his playgrounds, especially the slot canyons, narrow, winding corridors with walls so close you could almost touch both sides at once. But Aron didn't just hike with friends. No, he loved going alone. It was his escape, his way to connect deeply with nature. He planned every trip meticulously, packed smart, and knew exactly what risks he was taking. The wilderness was beautiful, but also dangerous. Yet he was confident, skilled, and ready. On this April day in 2003, Aron was headed into Bluejohn Canyon, a rugged, hidden part of Utah's Canyonlands National Park. A place famous for breathtaking views, but also for its cruel unpredictability. Flash floods, falling rocks, and deadly traps hidden in plain sight. He didn't tell anyone exactly where he was going, a solo adventurer's habit, and one that would nearly cost him his life. In his small backpack were the essentials: a bit of water, snacks, climbing rope, a multi-tool with a small knife, a cheap camera, and a camcorder to record his journey. He was ready. Beauty that hides danger. The morning air was cool, still. Aron rappelled down narrow drops, scrambling over boulders, squeezing through cracks barely wide enough for his body. The canyon walls rose like giant red cliffs, casting long shadows. The silence was almost complete. Only the faint wind at the rim above and the scrape of his gear against the stone. As Aron moved deeper, he came to a big boulder wedged between two walls. It looked stable, a common obstacle in canyons like this. Climbers often use such rocks to steady themselves, push off from, or climb around. Aron did what he always did. He tested the rock carefully, deciding it was secure enough to trust. His right hand reached out, gripping the boulder as he began lowering himself into a narrow crevice below. Then everything changed. The trapping. Without warning, that stable boulder shifted, not slowly but suddenly, a sickening lurch accompanied by the grinding sound of stone scraping stone. The rock, weighing nearly 1,000 pounds, slammed into the canyon wall with terrifying force, and Aron's right arm was caught, trapped, crushed, pinned tight between two immovable rocks. The pain was immediate and searing, not just pain, but the raw sensation of bone being smashed, flesh being destroyed. It was a nightmare made real, a moment frozen in absolute terror. Aron was stuck, completely. Alone, trapped, and facing the impossible. The crushing realization came fast. No one knew where he was. He was miles from any trail, deep in a maze of canyons where cell phones didn't work. His arm was trapped under a boulder that wasn't going anywhere. The canyon, once beautiful and welcoming, suddenly felt like a prison, silent, cold, and endless. The sun, high earlier, was slowly disappearing behind the cliffs. Shadows grew. Time became meaningless. Fighting a losing battle? In the first hours, adrenaline surged. Aron tried everything. He pulled with all his might. He pushed against the rock. He even tried to rig a pulley with his rope to lever the boulder off his arm. He scraped at the edges with his dull multi-tool knife, hoping to chip away stone or widen the gap. Nothing worked. The boulder wasn't budging. It was as if the canyon itself had swallowed his arm. As the sun set, exhaustion started to sink in. The air grew colder, biting at his skin. His water supply was limited. Each sip felt like a precious treasure. He rationed his snacks, knowing they'd do little to fuel him. And the most terrifying thought, no one was coming. He hadn't told anyone his exact plans. No one knew where to look. A heartbreaking goodbye. Using his camcorder, Aron recorded messages to his family. Goodbyes, explanations, desperate pleas. He spoke of his situation, his dwindling hope, his fears. Each video was a snapshot of a man hanging on by a thread, battling not only physical pain, but crushing loneliness and despair. Days in hell? 5 days passed, 5 days of thirst so deep it felt like fire in his throat. He ran out of water quickly. Desperate, he drank his own urine. A grim choice, but one that kept him alive. His lips cracked and bled, his tongue swelled. At night, freezing temperatures threatened to steal away what little warmth his body had left. His trapped arm couldn't move, couldn't generate heat. Hypothermia crept closer. The pain in his crushed arm was relentless, throbbing like a wild drumbeat. The swelling made it unbearable. Infection began to take hold, a quiet, creeping threat. Fighting the darkness. The isolation began to play tricks on Aron's mind. He saw water where there was none. He imagined loved ones appearing in the distance. He battled despair so heavy it threatened to swallow him whole. Yet, through the darkness, small sparks of clarity emerged, moments where he felt connected to something bigger than himself, moments of prayer, of hope. He kept recording, capturing the raw, unfiltered struggle of a man fighting to live. The unthinkable decision. By the 5th day, Aron's body was breaking. His arm had become necrotic, dead tissue festering and poisoning him. He knew he had only hours, maybe a day left. Death loomed from dehydration, infection, exposure, and then he made a decision that no one could prepare for. He would amputate his own arm. Preparing for the impossible. The thought alone was terrifying. Aron's only tool was a dull 2-inch knife blade in his multi-tool, barely capable of cutting skin. He knew he couldn't cut through bone, so he planned to break his forearm bones first, then saw through the flesh and tendons. He recorded his final thoughts on the camcorder, a farewell, a goodbye, a prayer. Every detail was planned, every step rehearsed in his mind. 1 hour of pure willpower. What followed was a primal act of survival few could imagine. He used all his remaining strength to snap the radius and ulna bones in his forearm against the boulder. The crack echoed in the canyon, and the pain was unimaginable. Then came the slow, agonizing process of cutting through his own flesh. With every saw, every tear, searing pain exploded through his body. He severed nerves that sent shock waves of agony. He cut through arteries, risking deadly blood loss. Using his climbing rope as a tourniquet, he tied off the arm to slow the bleeding. The self-amputation took about an hour. When it was done, Aron collapsed, weak and bleeding, but alive, crawling back to life. Now free, but barely standing, Aron faced the next challenge, escape. With one arm and a broken body, he had to rappel down a 60-foot sheer rock wall. He crawled, stumbled, fought nausea and dizziness. Blood stained the rocks and sand behind him. Hours later, he finally emerged into the open desert. The miracle. Rescue. Miles from his truck, Aron spotted something, a family of Dutch hikers. With the last bit of strength, he called out, waving his bloody stump. At first, they thought he was a hallucination, but when they realized the horror, they rushed to help. They gave him water and called for rescue. A story of human strength. Aron was airlifted to a hospital where he survived against all odds. He endured surgeries, rehab, and learned to use a prosthetic arm. His story inspired millions, told in his book and the film, 127 Hours. Aron went back to climbing, safer, but still fearless. He became an advocate for outdoor safety, urging adventurers to always tell someone their plans. What would you do? Aron Ralston's story is more than survival. It's about human will, pain, hope, and the lengths we'll go to live. It's a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments reveal the brightest strength. What would you do if trapped and alone? As always, visit us at readtherealstory.com for all the latest true crime stories and behind-the-scenes insights you won't find anywhere else.